Exactly. Exactly. Thank you for explaining that. Let's go on to the other question because we just finished the one about paradise clarity. Um, I want you to tell me about wait a minute, typo or faith? What was your inspiration behind it and all of that? Go
Yes.
into that.
Oh, so wait a minute, Typer of Faith. I worked on this book for the last 5 years. I started it in 2017, and it was when I knew I wanted to talk about my life, and I used a narration of Thompson, who is actually me, somebody who was raised in the church, very religious church that just had all of these specific doctrines. But I also wanted to talk about, again, the contrast, because at the time I was in a relationship with someone who was an atheist and I was a Christian. And so I didn't really know how to merge those two realities because for me, faith and fate, those are two different, the faith is what inspires you to live your life. And then the faith, it's like, how do I end up being with someone who doesn't even believe in this kind of stuff? Like, how can I merge this? And so, wait a minute, it's like, wait a minute. But it's also to weigh the minute to say, okay, what is around me that is influencing my next direction? So it's really just me going into a story also in the Bible in Numbers chapter 22, when Balaam was on his way to a city and his faithful friend, the donkey that he was riding, it stopped in the middle of his way and he hit it the first time. And then it stopped again and he hit it the second time. And it stopped again and he hit it the third time. And then after that, the donkey opened his mouth like, "Hey, why are you hitting me? Like, I'm your faithful friend. Like, what are you doing this?" And it's like, "You're stopping. Like, I'm trying to go this way and you're stopping." But the donkey stopped because he saw an angel of the Lord and he didn't want the angel to destroy him. So he was afraid. So that's why he stopped. And so that in itself was sort of like a typo. It's like if you're going somewhere, and I think we have these moments every day where you might be going somewhere and then you get a flat or the highway is closed and you got to take a longer route. And it's like, damn, why do I have to take this longer route? Why do I have to stop? And it's like you can learn something for that. You can learn something in that process. So it's really me coming up with this book was just about being honest with myself and understanding that my life is not unlike many other lives that folks live, especially those who are in the church. But it was imperative for me to understand that I had to really sit down and ask myself, why was I stopped? Why am I in this situation? And what can I do to change this reality? Because it's one thing to just be stopped in a direction and then accept that stopping and just getting angry about it like Balaam did. You're just angry, like, oh, this annoys me.
Yeah.
Just reactionary. But if you really pay attention to it, it's like people say, like, there's always a lesson to be learned in everything. And so when you stop and you consider the typos, and typos are funny in itself. I'm sure you've made them. We all make these typos, right? Where you send
Yeah.
something, oh, that's not what I meant. But people are reading it and it's like, well, that's what
What
you
is that?
said.
Yeah.
And now you can edit your text messages and stuff so where you don't see the typos, but people still know a typo can be very fun because it's like, well, you said this one thing and it sounded like this thing. But for
Yeah.
those that really know you, like, oh, I know what you meant. It's like, oh,
Yes.
so it was kind of like me just kind of having fun with that and also realizing that we all make these typos and they can lead us to our destined fate if we actually
Mm.
stay on there a little longer.
Yes, yes. It's like wait a minute. Just the wording of that specific sentence, but also wait. Like you need to understand the value of the time and the minute and what is going on around you. And there's definitely this kind of like observation going on,
Yes.
and it's watching your own thoughts before you react. And
Yes.
that's kind of like, yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
And that's hard. And I actually before I finished Wait a Minute Type of Faith, I was on a silent retreat it's called Vipassana. And it's a retreat that, you go on a 10-day retreat where there's no talking.
How was that?
It was difficult. It was hard as hell. The third day I wanted to run and leave. Like, what the hell am I doing here? But I'm glad that I did it because it really gave me the opportunity to really observe. Because the whole point of Vipassana is to observe everything. So observe your breath. So while you're breathing, you have to sit in this posture. By the third day, you sit in this posture and you're not supposed to move. You're supposed to stay in this posture for an hour. And this was
Ooh.
4 times a day. So 4 hours of the day, you're in this one posture, you're breathing, your eyes are closed, and you are silent. And you want to move, but the goal is to not move because it teaches you about sankharas, which translates to miseries, because the moment you want to change your uncomfortability then you lose focus on your breath. So if you want to itch or you want to, change your posture, you lose your breath. So the point was to stay equanimous, to stay observant. And so, because you realize everything rises and passes away. So that itch you want to have, it'll just go away. That change, like all of the uncomfortabilities, sit with that. Because if you're wanting something to get better without accepting what it is right now, you're not truly living in the moment. You're just trying to build on a new moment. So when I came back from that experience, it really helped me to see I do need to be more comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I really try to share that with folks. Like, it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to bring up conversations that may lead us to uncomfortable territories, because that's the only way we're going to get better. If we just silence ourselves in the moment we are uncomfortable, we have to change it, we have to correct it, we're not really living. We're just trying to be somewhere where we're not. We have to be comfortable being where we are and accept that. And so that's what this book is about, to just like, hey, wait a minute, slow down, take it all in, accept it, and understand that everything you're going through is going to eventually change. Nothing's going to stay the same. So the lie that we're being told every day, like, oh, it's going to always be like this, it's just going to always be like that, you got to fight against that. It's not. Everything's constantly changing. And change is slow. Change doesn't always happen in a huge leap,
Yes.
But it does. And when you really focus on where you are and you just accept it, you're more cool, you're collected. That's what equanimous means. You're collected, you're cool. You're not trying to be something you're not. You're just accepting it and you're taking it in for what it actually is.
Exactly. It's going with the flow, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You go, because the flow is like water, right? And then sometimes it might be like a rock.
Oof.
Or sometimes it might be like air. Because it's not always like, that's the thing, it's not always the most comfortable thing. And so when it's not that most comfortable thing, you roll with the tide.
Exactly. And I think that like that whole thing with uncomfortableness, it's that people don't necessarily realize that you avoiding to meet something is eventually going to turn it into this bigger thing that's
Yeah,
going to ruin even more things for you, because
yeah,
you're not used to that uncomfortability, right? But these things, uncomfort is actually a natural thing that we should experience. Like when we go outside, sometimes it's very hot, sometimes it's very cold. And you know how like some people are like, oh, I hate the
right.
cold or the hot. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm pretty sure we all kind of think like that. But when you watch your own thoughts, you're like, wait, this is just how it is. It doesn't mean I can change it. It just means that I have to adapt to it and learn how to work with it instead of against it.
Exactly. That's a perfect example for the weather, because I mean, I used to live in Minnesota and I complained all the time. It was cold as hell out there. But I learned, like, wait, this is just how it is. Like, no one is in control but yourself. You are the master of your own destiny when it comes to how you react. Your reactions determine your reality. So if you're just reacting negatively and you just grunting and oh, I can't stand, how is that helping you? Just accept it
No.
and find out ways to get comfortable. You can warm yourself up, put a hot pack on, do something to where you're not having to. And this also comes for roadways too. If you're driving and someone cuts in front of you, you can curse them out. You can
Yep.
do all of that. But how is that helping the situation? Right? Because
It's
you don't know.
momentarily.
Right. It's just it's all momentary, because it's gonna rise and it's gonna pass away. And a lot of times we put ourselves in worse situations by reacting negatively.
Yeah.
And it's just better to just accept it as it is. It's not to say you allow someone to walk over you or you allow someone to
No.
disrespect you, but you don't take your realities and make it malleable to the emotion. And if that,
Yeah.
especially if that emotion is making you negative and making you bitter, it doesn't help you.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely the paradise clarity that we need to have in mind in our daily lives when we're just interacting with everyday things, right? Like the weather, like whether it's certain situations, and definitely having a higher kind of like out of your mind look that you're in that situation, like physically, but also on another level where you're observing it. And that's what you mentioned about just observing things. I really like that.
Right, just observing, just observe. And I still hear the guy at the Vipassana retreat, the man who was our teacher. We would watch these videos, and he would just say, "Just observe, just observe." Say, "I want to be." I say, "No, no, no, just observe, just observe."
Exactly.
Because it will rise and pass away. Nothing stays the same. Rising, passing away, and even when things get good, because that's the other challenge. When things get good, we want to stay there, right? It's like, yeah, but then
It has to.
it's gonna
Yeah.
change.
Yes, and
Even
it's unavoidable. And it's unavoidable. I think, especially when you mention this with like our society, right? We think this is very permanent, like this is gonna last forever. But so did the Roman Empire think that. So did so many other countries in that moment were like, you
exactly.
know what, this is gonna be a legacy, it's gonna be great, you guys. And then like in the next 10 years, they're like everything's wiped out, it's
They just
destroyed.
wiped off and burned. Like they Caesar thought he was gonna always be on that coin. It's like,
Uh,
no, 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 no. That coin gonna be destroyed. And it's the same. One day, the American empire is gonna fall. I know a lot of people want to believe that because, like, no, 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 no. It's gonna fall because
yeah,
all empires fall. It's
it's
gonna
gonna fall.
happen. And I'm just in the process of like, let's speed up the process. Let's make it happen faster.
Yeah. Why not? Yeah, you're right about that. Because the more you, I've noticed the more the society pushes towards progress and change, like on an abnormal amount of it, like it's just forcing itself, it's going to deteriorate way faster than it is
Yeah,
if you're trying to preserve it. Because you're constantly,
right.
as you said, there's this insatiable desire to keep moving forward. But what are you moving forward to, right? It's this inability to understand that you need to change and adapt to the system. It doesn't mean that you need to comply with it. That's
Yeah,
difference.
that's different.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Next one. Next one. This is my favorite. The angle and the angel. I saw it on your website.
Right.
Please enlighten us.
Okay, so the angel and the angle sounds exactly how you would think. So angels, when people think of angels, it's usually, oh, it's awareness, it's
Yeah.
spiritual, it's something that's coming from an outside source, but yet it's familiar. And a lot of times when angels are spoken about in the Bible, they're very scary because they have like 6 heads and they a
Eyes,
bunch of
they're
wings,
going.
right? A bunch of like they can go from any direction. But the point is,
Yes.
what do angels always say? The first thing, be not afraid.
Be not afraid. Yeah.
I know I look scary. I know I'm not afraid, right? So the angel
Sure.
is the perspective of something that is higher, something that is spiritual. And it is something that you can't really explain. You saw it, you had that dream. And a lot of times angels, even when you read it in scripture, a lot of times they'll question you like, you don't know what this means? It's like, no. And then they'll tell you what it means. But an angle is a little bit more material. It's the mathematical, it's the calculator, it's the ruler, it's the observation that is quantifiable by what you define. So I think angels and angles are necessary. I don't have the opinion that you can only use the angle. And I hear that a lot. There are a lot of atheists that believe anyone who believes the spiritual, they just believe in the nonsense, and they just cast it all aside as nonsense. And and that's dogmatism to some degree, because you have to understand some people, whether you believe it or not, isn't going to change the fact that they believe it. And a lot of people, for belief is a source of refuge. So I think whether you're using an angle where you're just more empirical and you're more about like what the evidence suggests, or you're using something that isn't always explained by the evidence, but is explained by some supernatural or biblical or sacred text, either of those forces or either of those perspectives can be used to bring a higher form of understanding. And I think, and how I use it, I say, I'm one that I'm very much concerned about material reality. And I think material realities influence whether you use the angle or the angel. Because the material reality is the things you see, it's the systems, like I talked about earlier, the systems are in power. Whether you choose to believe in those systems or not, they still have an impact on your life. And they have an impact on how you decide to move forward in your life. So the angle and the angel is just another way of saying whatever approach you use, may it serve humanity. If your approach, and that's all it's about, serving humanity. If you're using the angel, please may it serve humanity. If it's just for you, going back to your personal life, I don't like to hear a lot of folks say, oh, I'm spiritual and I'm all this stuff, but they don't got nothing to say about the systems of injustice. They don't got
Yeah.
nothing to say about, it's just like, oh no, I'm just pray about it. Your prayers need to be met with actual activity that is changing the world
Yeah.
around you. So if you are a pastor and you have a mega church and you're not using that church to feed the homeless or to feed folks with food, but yet you want people to pay a tithe, to pay you money so you can get a new
Yeah.
Cadillac. No, you're not using it for the service of humanity. Now, if you're using it for humanity, if you're saying, okay, whatever I have, I'm going to make sure someone has something to eat. I'm going to make sure they have a house. That is more important. So I think it is anyone's responsibility, especially if you use the angel approach, if you have a spiritual practice, that must be in reliance with the science. And what I mean by that is it has to have a material effect on people, because it's not enough telling someone, God bless
Yeah.
you know, or giving them a turkey when
Yeah.
this thing's taken. Like, that's not enough. What are you doing daily to reflect that?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think you're right, definitely about that point where people can give, but they choose not to. I think maybe there's this type of like doubt and this kind of, we mentioned this about like our society specifically under our system where it's kind of like, oh, maybe they didn't deserve it because they didn't work hard,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so they don't deserve it. And who are we to judge? What is the system telling us about? Because we each start off with a different story. Like we each grow in different families under different circumstances. You know, we're indoctrinated by other forces in a way that even if we wanted to meet in the middle, it's really hard for people to do that. And to be someone who has a lot of like wealth and chooses to kind of like masquerade as this savior and then goes and does the exact opposite. Like I'm pretty sure you've heard about those televangelists who have like billion-dollar mansions
Oh
and they
yeah.
have like
I was,
jets.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
then they're like, you need to pay your tithing, or otherwise, this is not going to happen according to your,
You gotta sow a
beliefs. Like,
seed. You know,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Televangelist is actually, I remember being a teenager watching that as a teenager. I would watch these people from Creflo Dollar to Peter Popoff to TD Jakes. I mean, all of these people who have a huge platform who are literally using their platform so that people can donate money to them.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Kenneth Copeland, if you know
Kenneth,
who he
yes.
is.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes. Kenneth Copeland. Yes. He would have a ear mic in his ear, someone to feed him information, somebody to come and say, "Oh, I have this back pain." You know,
Yeah,
you just put some holy water on him. You're healed in the name of Jesus. And it's like,
yeah,
and people actually think, and again, that is the placebo effect. Because if you going out here
yeah,
thinking you shaking and you doing all this other stuff, but you
yeah,
don't have your material needs met, but because somebody of a higher in your mind, you're thinking that they're like a higher prestige, you're going to give them a qualification to quote unquote heal you.
yeah.
They have this money, they have this wealth, but they're not doing anything with that wealth.
Mm.
It's a
I,
shame.
I don't get it how like specifically in this situation, people see they can obviously see that this person, let's say Kenneth Copeland, has billions, and is choosing not to do the right thing over and over again, and they still pay. That is what is concerning because I think they're looking at him and they're like, wow, he is really a great guy. Look, he's teaching everybody how to be a better person using the Bible and everything. And that's why he has acquired that amount of wealth, but I don't think they understand that what he's actually doing is a manipulation, and it's not to help people, it's to help himself and kind of masquerade as the savior again, which is not the
Yeah,
truth.
I think people follow these folks because they represent a higher form of themselves. They want to be that. They want to be that
Yes.
person. They think they can be like that. And they're like, oh, but it's like I always tell people, Jesus was a poor man who wore sandals. Jesus was not doing that. And so when people, and that's why it's really interesting how people really want to believe. And I've even heard preachers like Creflo Dollar say, oh, Jesus don't want you to be broke. He wants you to live in abundance. And it's like, yeah, but how can that abundance be received for everyone if we have systems that make it to where that's not possible?
Yeah.
Like it's a choice why folks don't have the wealth that they need to survive. There are policies in place that make that the reality. So it's not just because some person worked hard enough or because a person had enough donations to set themselves up to be a steward of some form of humanity. If that humanity is not in interest of the masses of the people, if you are not concerned with most, like I feel like folks really focus on these one individuals. Kenneth Copeland,
Yeah.
TJ, all these just like this is people, but they have huge congregations and they're actively choosing not to do something with that. That is a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And that should be challenged because if it's not about all of us, it can't just be about one person.
Exactly. Exactly. This kind of reminds me of this thing that, people think they're doing the right thing, and most of the times it's quite the opposite. And just this, as you said, the system, the way it's rigged, we're supposed to be abundant, naturally abundant, not overly, to the point where it's kind of not even normal at this point. Like Jeff Bezos, man, what are you doing? And I've noticed this. I don't know why I'm going to mention this, but I think it's really interesting because I come from a different country into Australia, so kind of I'm an expat basically. And I always hear how people are like, "Oh, it's so sad that you come from like an undeveloped country." And I'm like, "Well, the reason why it's undeveloped is because of this first
Right.
world country, because it's being abused. Like literally the companies that people working back at home in my country are being underpaid in horrible conditions because of you guys, right?
Because of you,
And
exactly.
and then and then they say, you know what we should do? We should bring you guys, like unfortunate people, like I don't know, like expats, immigrants, whatever, to this country so you guys can live better. And I'm like, okay, so you're looking at this very like temporarily, right? Because you're thinking just about the financial aid, right? But you're not thinking about the cultural impact. You're not thinking
Mm,
about the heart of that person, about the land. And what it's doing is actually like cleaning out these lands. Like my home country, for example, it's being like drained from people and the workforce, adding to these countries' values. And what do we get in the end? A clean country that is ready for plowing with the big forces, because the big forces want that. They want to literally get everyone out so it's easier to invade. But I've never heard that mentioned ever.
oh yeah, no, they ain't talking about that. But I love that you mentioned land because that's what it's all about. They want the land so that they can get the raw materials. I mean,
Yeah.
they take people from those places, put them all around the world so that they can slave in those other, like you can slave out in America, you slave out in Australia, you slave out in all these other countries while these corporations go to that place to take their raw
Yeah.
materials and then
Yeah.
sell it back to us. It's really a system of
Cycle.
segregation. Yeah, it's plunder.
Yeah.
It's plunder. It's like, let me
It
take what you have. Let me just take it, take it, take it, take it, take it. And
mm,
if you have a complaint about it, you shouldn't complain because you have freedom now. You have,
yeah,
you know,
freedom.
like it's like no, no, no,
It's
no.
not freedom.
It's not
It's
freedom. If you got to take a people from their natural homeland, put them somewhere else so that you can take their land, you can't say that that's freedom. That's
yeah, no, definitely. And it's not even helping. It's again, it's a masquerade, right? It's not real. It appears to be so, but it's really not. And what is going to happen in the end? Like if we really look at the end goal of these the way these situations play out, people here especially think like whether it's in America or I think first world countries always believe, oh, we should go and send donations. And I'm like, yeah, send donations. And it goes to where? It
yeah,
goes to
yeah.
what
Yeah,
exactly? Do you
who's it doing?
see what's going on? Like it's very short-sighted and it's not even because I think first world countries in a way view themselves as superior to other countries. And then it's like, well, whatever you guys did was wrong. So you obviously need to come to us for help. And it's like, huh?
Like,
Okay. All
no.
right.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
flip it on you. That's how they do it. It's like, oh no, you need us. You need us. We helping you. We giving y'all a favor. It's
Yeah.
like, no, the best thing you can do is get out. How about you leave our country? Just go. We can do it on our we took care of this before you came. We don't need your assistance. Like
Mm,
giving people their own right to their self-determination. That's what needs to happen. I'm always talking about land back because that's what it's all about. It's like if you got someone who imagine if someone stole your like invaded your house, kicked you
yeah.
out, and said you gotta pay me taxes.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Does that make sense? No.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't make
No.
sense.
Let's go on to we have two more questions and the other one, well, the first one, well, yeah, you get it. The crumbs of society. Basically, I want to read this one thing that you wrote, which is we're living in a crumb society, numb to sobriety, but constantly fed with intoxicated waste, renewing the insatiable taste. Skyscrapers in the city with flashing lights and parking entrances lit pretty. Surrounded security, brick-walled fences, spyware, and firewalls, for instance, while surveillance is factored in, just like a factory setting comes programmed from within. Oh my, oh wow. That is brilliant. You just literally explained the entire thing we just talked about in
Yeah.
such,
That's why I
wow.
like poetry, because see, poetry can say it better than what I was all the rambling I just did. But yeah, crumb
Yeah.
society is definitely we live in a crumb society. I mean, when you think of a dog who is at a table of their owners, and the owner's like, all right, just give them the crumbs, just like, and that's kind of that's what's happening. Like we're giving when we get our checks from whatever job we have, when we look at that check, that's wage theft. Because when you think of all of the money that these oligarchs have, when you think of the money, like we speak of Jeff Bezos,
Nothing.
Elon, they are hoarding this wealth. And the only thing they give us in return is just enough to pay our bills.
Crumbs.
It's crumbs. So we're literally giving the crumbs. And so I wrote that so that we understand we can do something about these crumbs, because crumbs, you can't live off of a crumb. You
No.
can survive day to day with a little nutrition necessary, but you're not able to do much with crumbs. And the crumb
Yeah.
society is enforced to us because they're telling us you wouldn't know what to do with that money. It's like people just,
Yeah.
we know what we would do. We would take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
There's no reason why folks should have to work 3 or 4 jobs just to
Yeah.
pay their daily essentials and still not have enough. And, living in America, especially, there are no social programs here. If you don't work,
Mm.
you're on the street. And people know that. So it creates a sort of like a shallowness. A lot of people don't have dignity because our
Mm.
dignity is being striped away from us. Anytime you look at someone who's on the street who doesn't have a house, that's your dignity is being removed. Anytime
Yeah.
you see someone who doesn't have the resources, your dignity is being removed. And they reinforce that by saying things like, oh, they didn't work hard enough, or, go to school. Okay, go to school and get the $30,000 debt while you're in school.
Yeah.
It's really created so that folks just rely on the system. These corporations, from Delta Airlines to all of these Walmart, all these major corporations, they got billions in return, while most people were struggling. And they didn't even
Yeah.
want people to work from the house. They're like, no, you need to get back. Even though there's a rampant thing going around, get back,
Yeah.
keep working. So this existence of this crumb society, if anything, it should infuriate us. I think more and more people are not enough. They're not angry enough. And
No, they're not.
I'm a big proponent of sharing pain. We need to share some
Yes.
pain. We need to
So,
share some pain, because it's only one segment of the population who's sharing pain. These people are not in pain. They leave,
no,
and it's like, that's the problem.
it's giving me the vibe of crumbs of time. Like they're giving us
Mhm.
this specific
Yeah,
allotted time that you can use, right? Like if you're working 9 to 5, I mean, what do you expect to do with the rest, right? You're tired. You're gonna want to sleep. You're
exactly.
gonna want to
Right.
not do anything. So you're basically paralyzed in your bed because you're tired. What are you gonna do? Watch TV, more
Watch TV. Yeah.
indoctrination. You want to cook? Good luck. Like the next grocery shop is like 6 streets blocks down, right?
Yeah.
I've noticed this, especially in like first world countries like Australia and America, where, for example, simple things like grocery shops have now been basically eaten by these big supermarkets where you have to drive to. So you're going to have to need a car. You're going to
Mhm.
need to pay for gas. You can't walk. So
Yeah,
basically,
well,
that
yeah.
means you cannot socialize with your
Mm.
surrounding circle in your neighborhood. You don't meet your neighbors and you don't know them. So there's this specific anxiety that comes from that system, right? And what are you going to do? You're going to get pills. You're going to want to go to therapy. It's basically the crumbs that they leave is not even crumbs at this point. I mean, it's dust because it's
Right.
not, they don't want you to think. They don't want you to expand your mind. They just want to keep you alive enough so you can work for them while they rest, while they do the things
They
they want to
rest.
do.
Yeah. I love that
Yeah.
point you made. That is exactly what they like. Just for us not to talk to our neighbors, more and more people are not talking to each other. They have anxiety. A lot of folks don't even know how to communicate anymore. Like the
No,
children of this day, they don't know how to talk to each other. They're on their phone. Yeah, they're
yeah.
on the phone
So I
the whole
text,
time. Yeah, just
yeah,
like text me. No real communication, no real, and this is why I stress reading books and really understanding history. Because if you're not doing that, you're going to be numb. You're going to feel like you
yeah,
can't do nothing because you already know that the system don't give a damn. So what do? You're just like, oh, I just guess I'll binge watch a show on Netflix. I guess
yeah,
I'll order something from Uber Eats. I guess I'll just do anything to not really focus on this paralyzing reality. Because again, capitalism, if anything it does primarily, is it strips away your dignity. It makes you feel like you are not able to do anything but
yeah,
rely on them. Rely on your
exactly.
crumbs. And like it's not even at this point, it's not even crumbs. It's just the bare minimum of
Minimum.
something that you need to survive.
Exactly.
But again, we can be encouraged to know that it doesn't have to stay that way. We don't
No,
have to accept these crumbs. We don't have to just believe that this is the only way out for us. We can read history. We can gain our dignity by joining in with other folks. and doing something about this, because there's strength in numbers. We should always know that there is strength in numbers. No one is an island on their own. You can't do it by yourself, right? If you could do it by
That's right.
yourself, we would have done it already. It's not like the movies always make it seem as if one person superhero, you get to the phone booth and woo. That's not how anything is done.
Nah. And this is it. This is exactly what you're talking about. It's they're basically branding it as independence, but in reality, we cannot be independent because you rely on people to get things to the supermarket. You rely on someone repairing your car, flying you over like seas and like and airplanes and buses and taxis, and
Right.
not just that, food, everything, like technology, just everything is made by people. So you cannot be truly independent, but they're marking it as that because you do work independently. That's the one thing you can do. You can find a job and do that. And then you like I noticed this when I was working, and this one time I got on the bus to go to my job, and I was like, this is not really independence because I'm surrounded by these people who do their job in society. So I depend on them as much as they depend on me,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
we saw this in the pandemic, when like the employees in supermarkets had to stay behind to work. They were the ones who were valued.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, look, I worked at a senior living facility during the pandemic, at the height of its pandemic, and we were considered the essential workers. We didn't get nothing in return for that. We got emblematic
no,
gestures. Oh, thank you for your service, but we're not going to pay you a higher wage. We're not going to
no,
protect your safety. We're not going to make sure you get to work safe. We're just going to give you the same thing we gave you before. Like there's
yeah,
no value for that type of work. And so we can clearly see that it's a scheme to make people feel like they care, but they're not those material needs are never met. And
yes,
that says it all. That says it all. If you can't meet people's material needs and you just got to give them the platitudes, that's one thing the state will love. They'll always give you that. They'll give you the platitudes. They'll make you feel special for a little while, but they'll never actually meet that need because they want
no,
you to believe that you're on your own. They want you to believe that. But, if you really think about it, as you said, we're social beings. We're social
yes,
beings. We're like ants. We need each other. Even introverts, even people like us. I'm not necessarily trying to be out with people, but I understand the importance of people. I understand the
exactly.
importance of relationship building because I can't do it on my own. If we could do it on our own, we would have done it already. So we
Mm,
clearly need each other. We clearly can galvanize within ourselves the capacity to create a better world. We don't have to stay on our own and think that it's just, and a lot of folks think that because again, that's the message that's being reinforced. Oh, nobody
yeah,
cares about you,
yeah,
like that. People really think that, you know? So I'm here to challenge that. I'm here to say, no, you can really break that. And reaching out is one thing, but following up is another. It's just on us to do that. We really should take it upon ourselves to be more social because more you can save a life that way. Just by saying
exactly.
hello, just by complimenting someone, you know?
Yeah, someone next to you might be struggling and you won't even know it because they're so good at hiding it because it brings this sort of like shame that where people don't want to say it because they feel like they'll be judged because they're not appreciating life. They don't see the good things in life. But I think they're more aware of things than other people are. And then they shut themselves in. And then what happens is it builds up and no one hears them out. There's absolutely no one that they can really rely on, at least like just to explain their thoughts because as you said, people don't want to talk about uncomfortable subjects, and
Yeah.
that's what happens. That's the blockage.
That's the blockage, exactly. Not being, oh, I don't want to say that, or oh, it's like just say it. Just say,
Yeah,
like, just rip the veil. Just take it off and say it because the moment you do that, you'll feel more. And people respect that. People respect people who are more willing to say, "Hey, let's open this conversation up. This is a safe space. Share this." Because by keeping it in, it grows and it becomes like bacteria. It just
yeah,
becomes moldy. It starts to smell. It starts to grow. It expands, and then by the end of it, it's like, "Oh, what am I going to do with this?" So we do need to be
yeah,
more comfortable. Just like, hey, let's open this up. Let's share this. It's more
absolutely.
inclusive. We have the same enemy. It's oppressing you like it's oppressing me.
And that's when people start to they doubt the system, but they also doubt themselves to the point where it's like, wow, I can't find joy, for example, in watching movies all the time or watching TV or buying things all the time. And then they lose that kind of connection with other people because other people genuinely enjoy that stuff and they find fulfillment. But if a certain person starts to lose touch with that, they start to lose touch with people. It's really hard to break out of that, I think, because if you want to socialize here, I think in first world countries, you have to pay for it. So you have to go to get like classes. Like if you want to meet like-minded people, go to debates, you have to pay a fee.
Yeah,
You want to join a karate class, you have to pay, right? And all
yeah,
this
yeah.
stuff, isn't it? It's about giving and receiving, and it's basically more monetary than it is like engaging.
Yeah, it's transactional. So we need to really think of ways of connecting with folks. Like what happened to just going to the park and talking? Like
Yeah,
gathering your friends together. How about next time, when there's a holiday, instead of like buying gifts for each other, everyone just gathers together and talk. Talk about the thing like, hey, today we're going to talk about the things that are uncomfortable. And we're
yeah.
going to unpack that and see how we
Mm,
can help each other deal with that, because somebody might have a resource that another person don't have a resource to, but you'll never know that if you just hide into yourself and you just continually do the thing that is expected of you to do. So we have to
yeah,
go the extra mile and be willing to do the thing that is a little bit more uncomfortable just to get a higher result. That's the only way you can exercise a muscle. You can't exercise a muscle if you're choosing to ignore it. You got to get in actively. A lot of people say,
yeah.
"Oh, I don't like reading." If the more you read, you get better at it. But if you don't do it at all, it's like playing a game. I remember when I was a child, I loved playing the PlayStation. But there was a point where I was like, I can't play this game and read too. Really. I mean, I have to pick one. And I found more inspiration reading than I did just, and I tell this to my nephew all the time because, of course, he loves playing games. I'm like, it's nothing wrong with playing the game, but the game is already given to you. The game already gives you the world to explore. The game already
Yes,
tells you where to go. But if you're reading, your brain will tell you where to go. And it's not going
that
to
is
be
so.
something that can be created. It's something that's built on your own imagination. And that's a greater skill than to kind of falling into something that's been already curated.
And the last question, which I told you about, the buttons. I want you to tell me about what
Yes.
is it about the buttons that really just kind of
Oh, the
like
buttons. So
grabs
I
you in a
have,
chokehold.
these are all of the
Very
buttons
good
that I've
connection.
collected. Buttons, oh wow. So buttons have been for me symbols of my ancestors and symbols of those that have come before me. They are literally the access point to whatever world I want to create. And I've always enjoyed buttons because for me, sewing them are therapy, but buttons just represent kaleidoscopic reality, multifaceted reality. It's not just in there. And I typically use three type of buttons, which are the 2-hole buttons, the 4-hole buttons, and then the 1-hole button. And I've always enjoyed sewing buttons because they just bring color and they're just fun for me. And again, they are the poetic expression of the actual poetry that I write. And so what I like to do with buttons is remind people that things connect. And a lot of times folks know that, but they don't when they see, and I have various outfits where I have buttons in different type of algorithms. Like I might have a blob of buttons on my left shoulder and then a blob of buttons like on my pants or whatever, but they're all designed to sort of reflect connection because I'm all about connection. I'm all about things really like sticking to each other and binding together. So buttons have just always stayed with me. And I sew all the buttons that I own, and I am looking to eventually have button sewing sessions with folks where people can come, sit with me and sew buttons because I pretty much put them everywhere. But I just love buttons. They're fun, and I use them as a way of expressing myself because I've always loved clothes and fashion and all of that, but buttons is that one accessory that everyone notices. And everyone has been somewhere and you see, your grandmother got a jar of buttons and they just stay in the corner
Yes.
somewhere. I'm trying to use those buttons. Like I don't think buttons should be in a jar. Buttons should be on clothes, buttons should be on shoes, buttons should be everywhere because they are the reminder of connection. So yeah, buttons for me, it's a connection and it's a way for me to establish to the world that you can have a source of connection. You don't have to be alone. You can sow them and they can be. And I think what's going to happen for me eventually is, when I eventually leave this planet, folks will be able to use these buttons, like this, it'll be a piece. It's like an art piece, because
Yeah.
the way I configure them, it's its own little story in itself. So I think and I love that they're recyclable too. That's one of the reasons I love them too, because I can change. Like this shirt can look completely different tomorrow if I decide to take these buttons off and put them right here, and just like it gives me a way
Change
to
it up.
improvise. Yeah, I can switch them up very easily. So that's buttons, man. I just really enjoy them, and I've been sewing them for about 11 years, so I don't even usually think about like when people see them like, oh, did you put all those buttons on? It's like, yeah, I don't even really think about it as a part of, and I never want to be that type of person to, I would never sell a shirt with buttons. Like I'm not trying to make myself like the button guy where I'm like, oh, you want to get a button? Like I'm not going to do that. I'll happily sew buttons for somebody, but I'm not trying to be the person where I'm just like, in a way it is a part of who I am, but it's also anyone is able to use it. Anyone is able to sew buttons. Is not This does not belong to me. There have been people using buttons, obviously long before me. But I try to, again, I make it to where people are not just keeping these button jars in their corner. It's like, no, put them on
Exactly.
some clothes, put them on some shoes, put them on some hats, put them on some belts, put them on your necklace. Like I got them everywhere.
Yes. It's that visual image that actually drives you to actually connect things and act upon that desire to basically connect, to bind, as you just said. It's
Yeah.
really, really beautiful. And I'm so glad that you explained all of this because it's really fascinating. I don't use many buttons, but now that you've said that, you know what? I don't have a jar of buttons, but I might
Hey, I can send you
start
some buttons.
collecting.
I can send you some
Yes,
buttons.
please. I would
And
love
I
some
even, yeah,
yeah.
I even have I need to go back to this series. I'm starting a series on my channel where it's a 77-part series where I just sew buttons. And
Yeah.
I'm on part 8 now, and that'll be the next episode, but I'm going to do 77 episodes. And basically throughout that endeavor, I'm going to show the different ways of how to sew a button because there are multiple ways of sewing buttons. And I think most people are familiar again with just the 4-hole buttons because that's the most common button you see. It's just like the 4
Yes.
holes. But I particularly enjoy the 1-hole button because it's sort of invisible. And one just looks at that and it's like, how do you sew that on? Most people don't know how to sew it. So I'm trying to give people the reminder that these things are out there. And hopefully you can follow along with me and sew your own buttons. Because I guarantee you, if you ask somebody in your family, do you have a button? You can be pointed to. And then there's so many types of buttons. So there's so many different
That's
types of connections to have.
absolutely. I might do that. I don't have any buttons right now, but I'll ask my mom. She used to have like so many buttons, and I
See?
remember this, yeah, there was this specific one. It was black with like a bunch of crystals on it, and I always used to
Yeah.
love that one so much because it like looks so mysterious. And I was like, this is not just a button. This is something else. It was so
Yeah.
beautiful.
I have, like I said, these buttons, I mean, you say, well, this isn't like a black one, but like take something like this. This has a bunch of crystals in it,
Yes.
you know?
Oh, that is
And
beautiful.
and I want to shout out to the church, right? Because a lot of old ladies in my church have these buttons. And
They
I'm like,
sport those.
man, I like these buttons. I can see myself. So I mean, I love things with sparkle and with shine. It's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, illumination. So yeah,
Yes.
you should do that. I'm sure you'll be surprised because they're everywhere, truly. And you can
I'll
change them.
send you a picture. I'll send you a picture when I do. I would definitely love like a button necklace or something because that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I think I've reached the end of my questions. I wish I didn't have to like turn
No,
this
I
meeting off.
appreciate you again for opening this conversation and again for engaging. Wait a minute, type of faith. It is available for folks to listen to. It's just 2 hours and 14 minutes. It's not that long. So just take some time, listen to it. Reach out if you have any questions. But again, I appreciate you taking this opportunity to interview me and to talk about these connections. It means very much. So thank you very much.
No worries. I'm so glad. Like all of these topics were just so well explained by you, and it's just definitely it's very rare to see that kind of quality in people. And I think I'm just so glad to know you and to see your creations and especially like your books and stuff. And I'm definitely like as I said, sorry, my voice is cracking.
Thank you.
I would love to see you basically expand on these ideas, and I wish more people can hear about it because it definitely does make a change when people listen to these kinds of things and know that they're not alone in thinking this way. And when someone like you comes along and openly talks about it, it's important to listen and it's important to basically take this information, understand it, and then go into the world with that in mind.
Right, so that we can make the world a better place, right? Because that's what we want, right? We can
Yes.
recognize the world is kind of stinky, it's ugly, but we can do our part to make the world a better place. And that's what I aim to do with buttons. That's what I aim to do with the the poetry and the organizational work that I do, because I know that the world can change. I know that we can be the conduits of that change if we just socialize with each other and tap into each other's creativity and to continue the work, because again, the work has been done. We just have to continue it.
Thank you again so much for everything. And everybody else who's out there, please check out his website. I'll link it down below. Everything's going to be mentioned, his profile, his Instagram, everything. Thank you so much, Jesse. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.